Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! So, I never thought I would run across an actual Karen like those as I read about here. Well, yesterday I was proved wrong. So wrong. A bit of backstory. I have a 5-year-old girl that is best friend with my neighbor's daughter who is special needs. The two are inseparable. My wife had bought our daughter a toy a few weeks ago as a reward for doing all the chores and being awarded as Student of the Week in her kindergarten class. She immediately took it over to the neighbor's house and the two girls love to play with it. It's one of those toys that comes with accessories, slime, stickers, and so on. Well, since then, this particular toy has been featured on a very popular morning talk show and is now pretty hard to find. My daughter's friend's birthday is the day after Thanksgiving, and she asked me if we could buy her best friend the same toy as her gift. We couldn't say no to her request for her best friend, so we started looking online to see if we could find one. After a few days of no luck, one of the very popular, more bougie of the big box stores had some in stock at a store about 30 minutes away. I hit the road to try and get my hands on one before they were all gone. This is what happened when I got there, and I still can't believe it happened. I got to the store, grabbed the shopping cart because I was going to grab a couple other things while I was there, and walked straight to the toy department. I looked around for a few minutes before I finally saw the toy I was after. There was only one left and I grabbed it and put it in my cart. I was so glad that I finally found one. I started to walk away to continue shopping when I heard a voice behind me say, excuse me, but that toy was mine. I put it down and was coming right back for it. Do you mind? I replied, oh, I'm sorry. I have been looking for this toy as a gift for a very special little girl, and it was on a shelf, so no, I'm sorry. I'm going to buy it. She instantly shot daggers at me with her eyes and said, excuse me, I'm here first, and I need it more than you. I have a customer that ordered it and I need it now, so please, hand it over. That's when it struck me. She's a reseller and had promised something she didn't have. At that point, I didn't. I was pretty much like, oh well, that's not my problem, but maybe they have more in the bag. You should ask someone that works here. And I went about my way to finish my shopping. As I was walking away, she snipped, "You're a real jerk, you know that?" I sarcastically responded, "Maybe, but I got what I came for. Have an awesome day." And I walked away. I made my way to the laundry detergent aisle and quickly forgot about the woman. A few minutes later, as I grabbed some detergent and dryer sheets, I stopped to check what else was on my list. The same woman entered the aisle and quickly said, there you are. Listen, I asked an employee and they said there aren't any in the bag and they don't know when more are coming in. I would appreciate it if you would do the right thing and just give it back to me before I find the manager and tell them you took it out of my hands. I quickly responded, huh? What are you talking about? This toy was on a shelf and nobody else was around when I picked it up, so please leave me alone, you can't have it. And that's it. I tried to walk out of the aisle when this crazy Karen stepped in front of my cart, reached into my cart and tried to take the toy. I quickly pulled the cart back and said, "What's your problem, lady? Get away from me." She then tried again, but this time I put my hand on a toy before she could grab it. She then dug her nails into my arm before I smacked her hand away with a loud, "What the hell, lady? Get away from me." And this is when the crazy Karen act went into overdrive. She instantly started screaming for help at the top of her lungs. "Help! Help! He's attacking me! Help me! Somebody!" Naturally, a bunch of people quickly came over to see what was going on, and there I was, a 6'3" man with tattoos and a shaved head and beard, standing there as she threw herself on the floor. Yes, she actually threw herself on the floor, screaming for help. I thought to myself, this is going to end badly for me. Two employees were a couple aisles over and came running, and now there were a few people and the employees looking at this Karen on the ground pleading for help and screaming for someone to call the police. The employee asked what happened while helping her up from the floor, and she immediately lied and said that I attacked her and took her items from her cart. I quickly stated that this crazy lady is lying and she attacked me, then threw herself on the floor to get me in trouble. A manager shows up and asks what happened while Karen is standing there with crocodile tears saying that I assaulted her over her toy. I quickly denied the false accusation and demanded the police be called. The manager had the police called and I waited right there. The lady had a crowd of people around her, consoling her, and they were all looking at me like I'm some sort of woman beater. All the while, she's telling everyone around her what a monster I am and that she intends to press full charges against me for assault. After about 10 to 15 minutes, 2 police officers show up and start to ask questions about what happened. I explained what had happened from beginning to end and she told her twisted fairy tale. The officers asked if the security cameras had a shot of the area and we were escorted to the manager's office. And while one officer reviewed the footage with the manager, the other officer asked for our IDs and stepped out of the office, more than likely to do a warrant check, I assumed. This is when glorious karma showed up. After a couple minutes of the officer reviewing the camera footage and her continued lies about what happened, he asks Karen, "Ma'am, I'm only going to ask this once. Would you like to change your story about what happened?" I instantly smiled from ear to ear.
"What are you talking about? He attacked me and I want him arrested,"
said Karen. The officer responded, "Ma'am, that's not happening." He then turned to me and asked if I wanted to press charges for assault. And my answer was heck yes. Karen went pale as a ghost. She went on a tirade. Just then, the second officer came back into the office, handed me back my ID, whispered something to the other officer, and then asked Karen to stand up and put her hand behind her back and arrested her for an outstanding felony warrant along with an assault charge. What an awesome outcome. The manager apologized to me for all the trouble as Karen was let out of the office in cuffs. The officer photographed the scratches on my arm for evidence, gave me a copy of the report for court, and wished me a nice rest of my day. The manager even gave me a $50 gift card that I used to pay for my purchase and went about my merry way. All this over a toy and self-entitlement. Last summer, I found myself in a situation that would eventually lead to a pro-revenge story that I couldn't wait to share with the good people of r/pro-revenge. It all began when I decided to rent out a house trailer that I had just purchased. The place needed a bit of work, so I thought I'd sweeten the deal by offering 2 months of free rent to anyone willing to put some effort into making it habitable. I post the offer, carpet the living room, hook up the hot water heater, and install a toilet in exchange for 2 months rent-free. Seemed like a fair deal, right? Soon enough, a nice couple with a newborn responded, and we agreed to a month-to-month arrangement, no lease and no security deposit. Their monthly rent was set at a reasonable $450. They were eager to do the work and get settled in, so I thought this was a perfect match. Little did I know what was in store. For the first couple of months, everything went smoothly. They did the work as promised, so I didn't ask for any rent during that time. I was content with the arrangement. However, that contentment didn't last long. Now, there is something you should know about the local laws. If you don't pay rent for 3 consecutive months, you're considered a squatter. This means the landlord isn't obliged to make any repairs to the property and can even lock you out. If you happen to be on house arrest and get formally evicted, that could be a serious violation. Also, even if you've already moved out, a landlord can still pursue eviction to collect any rent that's due. It's all ultimately up to the judge's discretion. Fast forward 5 months and there is still no rent money coming my way. I understood that they had a newborn and were probably tight on cash, but I couldn't ignore the fact that the husband had just dropped $1,500 on a new engine for his car project. They would often go out to eat and invest in electronics, but their rent remained unpaid. After that 3rd month of no rent, I decided to bide my time. Winter was fast approaching and I had yet to install the promised furnace. If it weren't for the baby, I might have considered bad luck in the house right then. During this period, they casually mentioned their expected tax refund. I decided to give them a chance to catch up, hoping they would do the right thing. and to my surprise, they responded by claiming that they knew their rights and were engaged in a rent strike. Now this was illegal, and they would soon find out why. Then COVID-19 hit, and the husband lost his job. In light of their circumstances, I decided to give them a break, but as soon as he got back to work, I inquired about the back rent, and the response was a resounding "F off." That was the last straw. I gave them an ultimatum, 14 days to vacate the property voluntarily or I'll proceed with a formal eviction. The husband, being on house arrest, knew what that entailed. I genuinely tried to be nice and civil, hoping to prevent him from returning to jail and save them from an eviction record. They left in. I was prepared to cut my losses. That is until I inspected the property. Everything they'd work on was stripped away. They took it all. Every bit of the work they got 2 months of free rent for. I was furious. So I filed for a formal eviction. But that's when things took a turn they hadn't anticipated. They claimed I hadn't provided heat, which they said justified their rent strike. However, they hadn't filed anything with the court or set the money aside, thinking they could simply stop paying rent. Their investments in the trailer didn't even come close to the value of 2 months' rent. The day of the eviction hearing arrived and they began to badmouth me to the judge. And that's when I decided to drop a bombshell. "Well," I said, "you didn't inform me that you'd be on house arrest when you rented the property." Before that, the judge appeared disinterested, but now he was intrigued. He questioned them about it and they confirmed my statement. His ruling was about to be delivered. I ended up receiving 15 months of back rent at $450 per month plus $2,000 in damages for the mess they left behind. When they removed their stuff, they had damaged the trailer significantly. And for the husband, the judge had no choice but to refer the eviction to his parole officer. Fast forward to this month and his house arrest had been violated, resulting in his arrest. Astoundingly, they had the audacity to ask me to speak on his behalf. I declined. The ruling came down hard and he would spend his remaining 6 months behind bars. They had a blemish on their eviction record and they still owed me money. The lesson here is clear. Know the law before you try to play the game. This story takes us back about 8 years ago when I was working for a water company, repairing burst water mains on an on-call basis, a week every 2 months. Believe me, this one's a doozy. So there we were, a team of water main fixers, when we got an urgent call. It seemed a major pipe that fed water to a large housing estate had burst, and it needed repairs pronto. No biggie, we've handled these before. But this one turned out to be a roller coaster ride from start to finish. It was a dark and chilly night around 11 p.m. and we all gathered at the yard gearing up and getting the plans and drawings of other utilities in the area. Armed with our knowledge and equipment, we headed to the site, ready to do what needed to be done. Once we arrived, the first task was to set up the traffic management following all the regulations. We had to ensure that the people driving by could do so safely. We had a chat with the inspector who'd called us in trying to pinpoint the exact location of the burst. It was so much water that it was impossible to mark it in the usual way. With the information in hand, we put up barriers and work lights around the area, getting ready to roll up our sleeves. But just as I revved up the jackhammer, here comes Mr. Sleepyhead, trudging down the street in his slippers and dressing gown. Looking all perplexed and not too happy to see us. I took off my ear protection to see what he wanted, and it was clear it wasn't to offer us a cup of coffee. He barked,
"You can shut that darn thing off and scram until it's daytime."
I tried to reason with him, explaining that this was an emergency job. We couldn't have 600 properties waking up to no water, so it had to be completed right then. We emphasized that our work was fully understood by the council and the police. And then came the classic line.
"Do you know who I am?"
I had to bite my tongue and refrain from saying, "Yeah, you're the irritating arswipe who's stopping us from doing our job." Mr. Sleepyhead started messing with our air supply, attempting to prevent me from using the jackhammer. I had had enough. He started boasting that he knew the police chief inspector and threatened to have me arrested if I continued. I told him that I had to continue as per my emergency work order, and if he kept obstructing us, I'd have to call the police to get the job finished. He defiantly challenged me, saying, "Call whoever you like. I'll have you arrested and sacked by morning." By this point, I was cold, wet, tired, and getting seriously peeved by his antics. To enter malicious compliance, I walked back to the van, dialed the police, and explained the situation. We were out here carrying out emergency work, and one resident was preventing us from completing it. Mr. Sleepyhead stormed off, and I made myself a cup of coffee. About 40 minutes later, I saw headlights approaching in the distance, and I thought, great, just what we need to finish up and recharge by 6 a.m. Hopefully. Mr. Sergeant and Mr. Constable arrived, wanting to know what on earth was going on, and why the heck we were doing construction work after midnight in the first place. I patiently explained that a water main had burst and we had to restore the water supply by 6 a.m. Otherwise, around 1,500 to 2,000 people, only a slight exaggeration, would wake up without water. Mr. Sergeant realized a job had to be done, so he went to have a word with Mr. Sleepyhead. We could hear shouting from down the street, and then it all went quiet. Mr. Sergeant returned, telling us that the guy was a few sandwiches short of a picnic. A British euphemism for nut job. The police decided they needed to hang around just in case Mr. Sleepyhead started playing more of his ridiculous games. We fired up the compressor and a jackhammer again, with my back toward the police car to avoid anything flying in their direction. A few minutes later, the machine driver honked his horn to get my attention. What did I see? Mr. Sleepyhead had come back, carrying a piece of timber, or lumber for you American folks, and he was in the process of getting arrested for disturbing the peace. I couldn't help it. I laughed so hard I nearly wet my pants. Who's that daft to cause a ruckus when the police are right there? Just in case you're wondering, we were back up and running by 5:30 in the morning, and we even got a cup of coffee from Mr. Sleepy's neighbor, who had been highly amused because he'd watched the whole incident out of his window. His only regret was that his surveillance cameras did not capture video, so he only had the audio to share with his buddies. In the end, the water was flowing and we had a pretty hilarious story to tell. It just goes to show when someone tries to pull that "do you know who I am" card, they might be in for a surprise, especially when they are facing some determined workers, a jackhammer, and a pinch of malicious compliance. Apologies for the long-winded explanation. Hopefully, you can follow along. My daughter 8 started at a relatively new dance school a few weeks ago. She's in a 6 to 8-year-old ballet class. Last week a little 6-year-old joined, let's call her Abby. Abby is incontinent. Her mom is very vague about it, but she said it's due to an illness. On Abby's first day, the teacher brought her up in front of the class and explained that their bodies tell them when they have to go to the bathroom, but Abby's doesn't, so she has to wear a diaper. She told them if Abby had an accident, they are not allowed to laugh at her, and they do not need to say anything to her about it. She will go change and join class like normal. Abby had an accident, and apparently my daughter laughed at her when she was leaving the class. Then when they had a water break, the teacher said that my daughter loudly told Abby not to drink anything so she doesn't pee again. My daughter was kicked out of the class, and I was later told by the director of the dance school that bullying is not tolerated and that my options are to have my daughter apologize to Abby in front of the whole class, or we leave and don't get a refund. I told him that my daughter will not be apologizing in front of the class and that she is not a bully, but they said if that's the case, we will not be welcome to take classes with them anymore. The other moms in the class side was a studio director, and my husband is thinking we should reach out and see if she could rejoin the class if she apologizes because she liked the class. I think making her apologize in front of the whole class is just to humiliate her, and I don't want to let her do it, but everyone is against me on this one. Am I the jerk for not wanting to let the dance studio humiliate my daughter? And now some comments on the post. Someone saying, "So you're okay with Abby being humiliated but not your daughter?" You are the jerk. Your daughter needs to learn to be respectful to other people. Maybe she can learn from the dance class when she apologizes, as it seems she's not going to learn from you. Another commenter adds, you are the jerk. Your kid did bully her. Ask her what she would prefer as a consequence. Public apology or no ballet class. And for God's sake, teach your kid to be nicer to kids with disabilities. The world doesn't need more ableist bullies. Third commenter goes with, you are the jerk, and wow, I wonder where your daughter has learned to be a bully. No quotes required around the word bully because that's exactly what she is.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.